Hello, romance book lovers. Welcome to Tales from the Heart. I'm Jenna Harte, and each week I post new episodes from my stories of crime and passion. Right now, we're listening to Old Flames Never Die, Book 2 of the Valentine Mysteries. This week is episode 12, chapter 17, where Tess goes to New York and someone tags along with her. You'll have to listen to find out who. If you'd like to read along or get ahead in the story, you can get Old Flames Never Die from your favorite ebook retailer or save by buying direct from me. You can visit jennaharte.com/Valentine for all the information. Now, Old Flames Never Die is the second book in the Valentine Mystery series. And if you missed book 1, Deadly Valentine, you can listen to that by checking earlier episode postings. Or if you'd like to read it, you can get the ebook for free at my website, jennaharte.com. Now, never miss the mystery of romance by hitting the subscribe button. And remember, all the details and links you might need are a click away in the description. Now, snuggle up, get comfy, and enjoy the show.
Chapter 17. Changing rooms at the hotel hadn't done much to squelch the pain of losing Jack. Moving to a different hotel didn't work either, but Tess had known it wouldn't. She'd run away from Washington back to Jefferson Tavern to escape pain, and while she'd rebuilt her life, she knew she hadn't left her problems behind. Not until Jack had come back into her life had she dealt with and healed from the hurt and anger of betrayal. Too bad Jack couldn't help her now, she thought, as she rode with Daniel to the airport. He drove to the private plane area and helped her from the car. She walked alongside Daniel towards a Gulf Stream.
The city isn't paying for this.
No.
She knew Daniel had access to Worthington money, but couldn't understand why he'd put her on a private plane for an investigational trip that was probably a waste of time.
Just go see what you can find and then enjoy yourself, or think or do whatever women do to put themselves back together.
I'm not broken.
Here's the account Liv gave us of her day in New York.
He handed her a folder.
It also has receipts and phone logs, so you can coordinate them. We've spoken on the phone with most of these sources, but I'd like them to confirm the woman they saw was Liv, so there's a picture of her as well. I've included pictures of Kevin, his wife, and Wilson.
When she looked at him questioningly, he shrugged.
You never know. One of them may have helped her.
Thank you.
Tess said, not for the folder, but for the effort Daniel was making to help her.
I know this must be costing you a fortune.
This is costing me a great deal, but not money.
Huh?
Do the job and take some time to enjoy yourself. I'll see you tomorrow evening.
She put the files in her briefcase and started up the steps to the plane.
Miss Madison?
A man greeted her as she entered the plane.
Yes.
I'm Tom Laskin, the pilot. Make yourself comfortable and we'll be on our way in a few minutes.
Thank you.
She stowed her belongings and took a seat. She closed her eyes and savored the feel of the soft leather seats. She didn't know much about planes, but she knew this one was special. She saw a kitchenette and dining area. In the back there was a door to another room. A bedroom? The plane was like a Winnebago with wings, only slicker and plusher. The plane started to move. It picked up speed, and she watched as the Jefferson Tavern landscape dropped way. She couldn't stifle her grin.
Private is the only way to fly,
she said to herself.
Then you'll fly private whenever you want.
Tess whipped her head around to the all-too-familiar voice. Jack moved towards her, looking tentative, unsure, and more than a little green. He glanced out the window, then quickly sat in the seat opposite her, closing his eyes. It appeared that he was trying to steady his breath. Tess was equally hopeful and annoyed at his arrival. She hated the desire she had to climb into his lap, wrap her arms around him, and never let go. Fortunately, her anger was closer to the surface.
Where'd you come from?
Slowly his lids lifted, revealing the brilliant blue-green eyes that always stole her breath. This time was no different.
I was in the bedroom in the back.
What are you doing here?
I'm going to help you.
Help me what?
Investigate.
The plane lurched. Jack's breath hitched and his fingers tightened on the handrest of his seat. He wasn't kidding when he said he didn't like to fly.
Does Daniel know you're here?
How do you think I knew you were going to New York? Whose plane do you think we're on?
You hate to fly. Why would you have a plane?
Because people who work for me often have to go on business trips.
He reached over to shut the shade on the window. Tess didn't know what to make of it. Why would he volunteer to help? Why would Daniel let him?
Actually, I'm here to apologize and hopefully get another chance.
That flutter of hope tried to make its way free again. Tess stamped it down.
So you just show up, offering to help and expect me to forgive and forget.
No.
Frustration combined with physical discomfort etched away at his attempt at calm.
I figure I have about 2 hours to convince you to spend the afternoon with me, during which time I'll try to charm you into spending dinner with me, if I'm lucky.
You won't be getting lucky.
His lips curved slightly.
I'm already lucky. I'm alone with you, even if you'd like to throw me out of the plane.
He had that right. Sort of.
You're not that charming.
Okay, I won't use charm. I'll use the fact that I love you desperately.
Low blow. She tried to distract herself by reopening the shade and looking out the window.
Great view.
I'll take your word for it.
When he moved, she thought he was giving up. Instead, he dropped to a knee in front of her and tentatively took her hands in his.
Tess.
He gave her a remorseful smile.
I know I screwed up. I asked you to trust me with your feelings and then I didn't listen. I promised I would give you time and instead I gave you an ultimatum. I'm sorry. I can give you an excuse if you want one.
I don't want anything.
She turned her head away, but left her hands in his. She wanted to shake them off, but couldn't quite bring herself to do it.
I know you think the worst of me. Not only did I hurt you, but you think that I betrayed you. If I can't win you back, I need to at least convince you that I didn't betray our love. I did go to see Liv the other night, but I didn't sleep with her. I didn't even think about it.
Turbulence jostled the plane, nearly pitching Jack on his butt.
Christ, I think I'm going to be sick.
Is that from the flight or from having to grovel?
He lifted his head and mustered a grin.
Which will earn me more points?
Neither, if you puke on my pumps.
Another round of turbulence sent Jack back to his seat. He let out a curse and lowered his head between his knees.
Here's the thing,
his muffled voice said.
If I live 100 years, I won't be able to make up for the pain I caused you, but I'm going to try.
How was she supposed to guard her heart against a man who was begging for another chance with his head between his knees because he was terrified of flying?
I know you're thinking, why bother? Love sucks. I took a chance and he broke my heart. But I promise you, Tess, I won't ever hurt you again.
He lifted his head, and she considered pretending she wasn't listening to him. But he looked so pathetic, and his eyes shone with such love and regret. She found her love for him escaping from the prison she'd tried to lock it in. Still, while her heart betrayed her, her mind stayed firm. How many times in the last week had they been right where they are now? Trying to make up? Trying to make things work? But for how long? When would their views clash again? Despite their efforts to stay together, they couldn't seem to make it work.
We've been in this position several times now. How will today be different from every other time?
He gave her a pained look.
I don't know. All I can promise is that I'll try. I'll never give up on us.
It was another answer that had her heart melting, but she fought against it. She turned, looking out the window to think and sort out whether or not she needed to cut her losses, or let her heart guide her one more time.
Jack knew he was losing the battle. The threat of being sick or having a panic attack made it difficult to keep trying, so he let her brood as he focused on surviving the flight. When the plane landed, his anxiety about the flight dissipated, but the fear of losing Tess only grew. She barely glanced at him as she rose and went to stand by the door until the pilot opened it.
I arranged a car for you,
Jack said once the plane's door was open. A black-town car pulled up to the plane. The driver stepped out.
Miss Madison?
She nodded and the driver opened the door. Jack's heart sank. He knew it had been too much to hope for more, but he'd hoped anyway. He had to let her go. He didn't want to. Instinct had him wanting to go to her, pressure her to let him continue to try. But that's what got him in this position in the first place. It was a true catch-22. But for once he determined he'd go against instinct, which meant he had to let her go. He'd hire another car to take him to Penn Station and catch a train back to Washington, D.C. The plane would stay and return her home tomorrow. As he slipped his hand into his pocket to pull out his phone and call for a car, he told himself that letting her go now didn't mean all hope was lost. He told her what he needed her to know, and now he'd give her time to consider. He watched as Tess started to get into the car, but stopped.
Do you know the purpose of my trip?
You're here to verify or debunk Liv's alibi, and to mend your heart.
He hadn't liked the plan that Daniel had explained to him the night before. Not so much the part about checking out Liv's story, but instead the part about Tess getting over heartbreak.
And you're all right with that?
Tess, I've never once asked you to stop your investigation.
She gave him an annoyed look that said, "Here we go again."
But you don't think she's involved?
I don't know.
The truth was he still had difficulty thinking that Liv killed her husband. He knew Liv could be dishonest and unfaithful, but he believed that with him, she was more herself and not the persona she was always putting out into the world. But when Daniel had told him about Liv's baby and he considered all the attempts Liv made to rekindle things with him, despite his repeated rebuffs, he had to consider that the persona was who she really was. He didn't warrant any more honesty or loyalty than anyone else in her life. His loyalty only went so far, he decided. She gave him a curt nod.
We've got several places to visit.
It took him a moment to realize she was inviting him to go with her. He tried not to jump for joy or pull her into his arms. Containing his relief, he slid into the car beside her. The car sped along Interstate 278 to Manhattan. While she'd invited him along, she still wouldn't look at him or talk to him. Instead, she went over her notes.
Tess?
Hmm?
You believe me, don't you? That I wasn't with Liv?
She looked up at him, her amber eyes piercing his soul.
Yes.
He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. And yet, he had to be sure. Her demeanor was so different.
It's important to me that you know I never betrayed you.
I know you didn't sleep with her. I can see the truth in your eyes. But there is more than one kind of betrayal, isn't there?
Her words were like a stab to the heart. He knew she was referring to his support of Liv, that she'd felt he'd chosen to believe Liv over her. He hadn't realized it at the time. Before it had been a difference of opinion. But now he could see how she'd feel betrayed.
I'm sorry. It wasn't my intention to dismiss your feelings. I was wrong not to give you more credit.
She nodded, then turned back to her work. Any gains Jack thought he made were quickly gone.
Their first stop was at the day spa where Liv had spent most of the day when Charles was murdered. The high-end spa's entrance was decorated in a Mediterranean theme with mustard gold walls and lush burgundy velvet curtains. Jack stood back as Tess approached the front desk. She looked back at him, and he nodded. She wondered if he was giving her space to do her job, or if he didn't want to be a part of investigating Liv.
Can I help you?
The woman behind the desk had blonde hair that Tess suspected wasn't her natural color and a white lab coat. Tess wondered why a spa would need lab coats, and then considered that maybe it was a marketing gimmick.
Yes, I was wondering if you could let me know if this woman was here last weekend.
Tess held out Liv's picture.
Oh, I'm not allowed to give information about our clients.
All I need to know is if she was here. I'm just here to validate her alibi.
Liv needs an alibi?
So you know Liv Danforth?
I'd like to help you, but spa rules.
Tess inwardly scoffed. How often had this girl talked to her girlfriends about clients? The shoes? The affairs? Her friends probably knew every detail of the spa's clients' private lives.
Who can help me?
Tess asked.
Constance. She's the manager.
Is she available?
Let me check.
The woman turned and entered a side room. Tess took the time to scan the spa. Her visual tour ended on Jack, who stood and came to stand next to her.
You wanted to see me? I'm Constance Brockwood, the manager.
Yes, I'm here to confirm that Liv Danforth was here last Saturday.
I'm sorry, but I can't discuss anything about our clients.
Tess felt Jack move as he leaned in conspiratorially towards the woman and smiled.
Liv is our sister. It would really help us and Liv out if we could verify she was here.
Tess frowned at Jack's intrusion. The woman took a long, appreciative perusal of Jack. The woman melted under Jack's dimple. It was obscene the things he could get with that dimple.
I didn't know Liv had a brother or a sister.
She added as if she just noticed Tess.
Liv and I haven't ever been close,
Tess said.
She's a black sheep, but she's our sister.
Jack added.
What can you do when a sister needs you?
Is she in trouble?
No,
Tess said.
but it would help if we knew she was here.
Her husband was murdered.
Jack said.
You know how the police think?
The spouse is always the first suspect. We did get a call from the police.
Constance said.
Well, I guess we could just verify her appointment.
Jack turned up the wattage on his smile.
We'd appreciate that.
Last week's book is in the office. I'll be right back.
Constance excused herself.
Power to the dimple.
Tess murmured to Jack.
What can I say? Some people like my charm.
Yes, she had an all-day appointment.
Constance said as she rejoined them at the front desk.
She logged in at 1 and was here until 4.
4.
Tess asked.
She had a massage and a sauna, facial, manicure, pedicure, waxing.
We get the picture. Is there any way we can talk to the people who worked on her?
Tess asked.
I thought you just wanted to verify she was here.
We do. But an appointment doesn't mean she was here.
Tess said.
We just want to be sure she was here the whole time. Liv used to sneak out of the house when we were kids.
Jack added, with his signature smile. Constance regarded him a long minute.
Okay, but I don't want you to disturb them while they're working. I'll list their names and break times.
Perfect.
Jack reached out his hand, and Tess thought the woman was going to melt to the floor when he took her hand in his.
Thank you very much, Constance.
Tess rolled her eyes. 2 hours later, they left the spa with no new information. Yes, Liv had been there. No, she didn't seem preoccupied, nervous, or upset. No one had called her, and she hadn't called anyone.
Well, that was a bust,
Jack said as they walked up the busy New York street.
At least Constance got something out of it,
Tess said. Jack grinned.
After the spa, Liv went to Bergdorf Goodman and then Harry Winston's.
That explains the expensive timepiece she's been sporting.
In Bergdorf's, they weren't able to find the cashier who helped them, but a manager did verify the receipt was genuine. At Harry Winston's, the clerk remembered Liv from previous visits.
Sounds like Liv was a regular there,
Jack said.
I wonder if that is how she planned to walk away from the marriage with more than the clothes on her back.
Jack gave her a quizzical look.
She had a prenup, and it doesn't look like his death was going to give her much more. But jewelry, like real estate and art, holds its value.
He nodded.
She'd think up something like that.
They watched their hired car as it pulled up to the curb.
But spending your husband's money isn't a crime, and her alibi checks out.
But you still think it's fishy?
Jack asked.
Yes, but the evidence says otherwise. It's not like there aren't other more viable suspects.
Like who?
Their driver opened the door, and Tess slid in first. She wondered how much she should tell Jack. Her instinct was to say nothing. But Daniel had helped arrange this trip, helped Jack arrange to be with her. Did that mean Jack was part of the investigation now? Then she remembered spilling the beans about Liv's baby to Daniel and decided maybe she owed Jack some information in return.
The partner. And the son.
The partner on that land deal?
Tess nodded.
Turns out that land is sitting on a gold mine. Well, not gold, but an industrial mineral worth millions, and only Charles owns the rights to it.
I thought they owned the land together.
The land, yes. Not the mineral rights. Charles owns that. He stopped all construction on the land to mine it. The partner gets nothing.
Ouch,
Jack said. The driver took them to their hotel.
Daniel says I'm booked on the same floor Liv was on. Maybe room service, or the maid will have something to tell us.
Not the front desk staff?
Probably not. They have that don't talk about guests rule too. I'll try, but I doubt we'll get information.
As expected, the front desk had nothing to share.
So what's your next move?
Jack asked as he walked with her to the elevator. The bellboy poked the button and held the doors for them to enter the car.
I make some notes. Go over the notes I have.
Jack nodded, and Tess noticed he looked a little nervous. Well, maybe not nervous, but unsure. No doubt he was uncertain as to her feelings about their relationship. She was uncertain as well, despite her heart's insistence to give it another go.
This is your room, miss,
the bellboy said as he opened the door with her key. It was then Tess realized that she hadn't considered the room situation. As if he knew what she was thinking, Jack said,
I'm next door.
There's an adjoining door,
the bellboy said.
I'll open my side if you need anything.
Sure, okay.
Tess nodded. The suite was what Tess would expect from someone like Liv. It had all the amenities, including a phone by the toilet. Tess couldn't imagine ever making a phone call while using the bathroom. She wondered what sort of people did. She spread her papers out on the coffee table and sat on the couch to write down her thoughts and her notes. Then she picked up her phone to call Daniel.
Are you mad?
She sighed.
No. Surprised, but not mad.
Brad said Jack would be back.
I'm not surprised Jack is back. I'm surprised you helped him.
I didn't do it for him.
She heard tension in Daniel's voice.
I didn't think you did.
So, is everything all right?
All of Liv's alibis checked out.
I'm not talking about the alibis.
Tess leaned her head back on the couch and pinched the bridge of her nose.
I don't know.
What did he do?
Daniel's tone turned agitated.
He didn't do anything. Not anything wrong anyway. I guess I'm gun-shy. If I take him back, who's to say we won't be back to where we are now by the end of the day?
Daniel was silent for a moment.
What do you think of my parents' marriage?
It's great.
As far as Tess was concerned, Helen and Tom had the perfect marriage.
Do you know my mom broke off the engagement to my dad when she learned he was going to work for Asa?
No.
The information surprised Tess. She knew that Helen hadn't thought much of her brother's character, but Tess didn't imagine she'd let it get in the way of her relationship with Tom.
And nearly every fight they've ever had was about Asa.
I didn't know they ever fought.
Everyone fights, Tess. And there are some issues that can't be fixed in one argument. There's a reason people say that relationships take work.
How'd you get so wise?
I'm just telling you what I've heard.
She smiled.
So you think I should give him another chance?
Daniel sighed.
If you love him and he makes you happy most of the time, I think that's worth your fighting for.
Tess knew it wasn't easy for Daniel to encourage her to take Jack back, but he was putting her first, and he was making sense.
Thank you.
Just be happy, Tess.
She set the phone on the coffee table, then sat back on the couch. It was odd that Daniel was encouraging her to give Jack a chance. She thought about what he said about his parents. She hadn't known that Helen and Tom ever had any problems. She knew Helen refused to attend family functions involving her brother, Asa. Had she felt betrayed by Tom for his going against her wishes and continuing to work as Asa's lawyer? Had Tom been resentful of her attempt to dictate his career? She didn't think so. Somehow they'd overcome that. They'd decided that their love was more important than that one difference of opinion. Could she and Jack do that? It was difficult for her to not think that they would fall in the same cycle they'd been in. Every time they seemed to work things out, they went bad again. What did Helen and Tom do to stop history and old habits from repeating? She knew Tom and Helen loved each other deeply. Was that the answer? Tess had begun to think that love wasn't enough to keep a relationship going. If it were, wouldn't she and Jack be blissfully happy? She remembered Jack telling her that he felt like she always had one foot out the door. Was that true? No, the truth was, she'd never had both feet in the door. The realization made her feel both guilty and hopeful. She looked up to the door that linked her room with his. He said he'd open his side. Was he waiting, hoping she'd come through it? The question was she brave enough to plant both feet on his side?
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Tales from the Heart. I hope you enjoyed it and that you will be back to find out what happens next. Is Tess going to give Jack another chance? And are they going to learn anything new about the investigation into Charles Danforth's murder? Now remember, you can listen to full, uncensored episodes over at reamstories.com/Jenna Harte. And if you'd like to read along or get ahead in the story, you can get Old Flames Never Die from your favorite ebook retailer or save by buying direct from me. All the details and links you might need are just a click away in the description. Be sure that you don't miss the next episode by hitting the subscribe button so you'll know when it's posted. Thank you again for listening, and until next time, this is Jenna Harte wishing you peace, love, and happily ever after.